You know, there is a very specific kind of exhaustion that I think everyone listening to this has experienced at least once.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, picture this. You come home and you are just entirely hollowed out. You know what I
And
mean?
you're not totally unplugged.
Right. You aren't crying. You aren't necessarily broken. You are just like unplugged from the inside out. It's this bone deep fatigue that doesn't come from working a 12-hour shift, but from holding yourself together all day while everything inside of you quietly unravels. So you walk through the door, you drop your keys, and all you want in the entire world is to sit in the quiet with someone who will not flinch at your silence.
Just someone to share that space.
Exactly. But instead, what usually happens, you get words, a barrage of them. Like,
Yeah.
well, have you tried talking to your boss? Or maybe you're just overthinking it. Or, when I went through this exact same thing.
Right, the unsolicited advice.
Yeah. And in a split second, you are entirely alone again. Not physically, but emotionally, you just vanished.
It really is this quiet tragedy of modern intimacy.
It really is. Today, we're taking a deep dive into why this happens. We're looking at why our default setting for comforting the people we love is actually pushing them away, and how to unlearn that desperate need to just fix their pain.
It's such a crucial shift to make.
Okay, let's unpack this. Why do we immediately equate making noise with establishing a connection? Like, why is our instinct to fix rather than to just be?
Well, I think it's because we have developed this fundamental confusion in our relationships regarding what safety actually looks like.
What do you mean by that?
We genuinely believe that if we do not say the right thing, if we
Right.
don't, offer the perfect piece of advice that magically lifts the other person's mood, we've somehow failed them.
Right, like we're not doing our job as a partner or a friend.
Exactly. So we rush in, we fill the space with solutions, with anecdotes, reassurances. We throw anything we can into that unbearable space between two human beings who are actually just feeling something raw and real. But what we see, especially when we look at this through the lens of Gestalt therapy, is that by rushing in with words, we are often shutting down the other person's emotional process.
Actually stopping it.
Yeah. We think our advice is a bridge connecting us to them. But more often than not, those well-intentioned words act like an emotional circuit breaker. They're basically walls disguised as bridges.
Walls disguised as bridges. Wow. A circuit breaker. That makes a lot of sense. I was actually thinking about it like when a computer completely freezes up.
Oh yeah, that's a good analogy.
Right. You've got too many tabs open, the fan is just whirring, everything is locked, and if you frantically start mashing the keyboard and wildly clicking the mouse to fix it.
You just make it crash harder.
Exactly. You overwhelm the processor. Sometimes the machine just needs a minute to process the load. It needs you to take your hands off the keyboard.
I love that. Just take your hands off the keyboard.
But I do want to stop and push back on this a little bit because it feels, I don't know, incredibly counterintuitive. Hold on. Isn't offering advice a sign that we actively care? If I see someone I love struggling, my brain immediately starts searching for ways to alleviate their suffering.
Of course it does.
So are you saying that every time I offer my partner advice, it's just a selfish act? Because that feels a little harsh.
This raises an important question. It really hits on the exact paradox we try to unpack in this kind of work. It isn't that you don't care. Not at all.
Okay. Phew.
But it's that underneath the caring, there is a secondary, often unconscious motivation at play. When we see someone in pain, it triggers our own feelings of helplessness,
Right.
our own uncertainty, and perhaps, our own unexpressed grief. So your nervous system starts to panic.
Because I don't like seeing them in pain.
Yes, but also because you don't like how their pain makes you feel.
Yeah.
The internal monologue is like, I must intervene, I must make it better, I cannot tolerate this tension.
Oh, wow.
That rush to intervene is heavily driven by anxiety management. Your own anxiety. You are frantically mashing the keyboard because you can't stand the tension of the frozen screen.
So the advice acts like a circuit breaker because it stops the flow of their intense emotion to protect my system from overloading.
Precisely. And the person in pain feels that, even if they can't quite articulate it. They feel that your agenda is to change their state rather than to be with them in their state.
That makes so much sense. I've definitely felt that on the receiving end, like I'm suddenly a project to be fixed.
Exactly. We often look at this through something called the cycle of experience. It is the natural, organic rhythm by which we process life and emotion.
Let's break that down. How exactly does that cycle work in a real-world scenario?
So imagine you're stressed. First, there's a physical sensation, maybe a tightness in your chest or a dropping feeling in your stomach.
Yeah, classic anxiety.
Next is awareness.
Yeah.
You consciously realize, okay, I'm anxious about this presentation. Then you mobilize your energy. You decide to walk over to your colleague's desk to talk about it.
Right, taking action.
The next phase is contact, actually looking them in the eye and expressing that fear. And finally, if that contact is met, you reach resolution, which is the relief of being heard.
And then you can let it go.
Exactly. The cycle completes and the energy dissipates. But so often, this cycle shatters right at the threshold of contact.
So I walk over, my chest is tight, I open my mouth and say, I'm so overwhelmed by this presentation. And my colleague immediately fires back with, oh, just use the new slide template, it's super easy. Bam.
Bam. The cycle shatters.
Wow.
You were seeking emotional contact, and you were handed a logistical tool. The feeling wasn't processed, it was intercepted.
That is so common, it happens all the time.
It does. And we identified two main culprits for this kind of interruption. The first is deflection. This is when we turn away from direct, vulnerable contact.
Like using humor.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes we deflect our own feelings, making a self-deprecating joke to avoid crying. But we also deflect other people's feelings.
Checking your phone, maybe?
Checking the phone, abruptly changing the subject, or flooding the space with rapid-fire advice. Those are all ways to deflect the intensity of the moment, so the real feeling can hide behind language.
That one I recognize immediately. Flooding the space with words is absolutely my default defense mechanism.
It's a very common one.
But, thinking about the second interruption, which I think is projection, I have to admit it made me rethink so many of my past interactions.
Projection is a big one.
Let me see if I understand this mechanism. Projection happens when someone else's raw emotion wakes up an old pain or like an unresolved issue within you. And because you cannot handle the feeling it evokes in you, you project your intolerance onto them. You try to fix them to soothe yourself. Is that right?
That is exactly it. Projection is basically a defense against our own inner landscape.
So if I am visibly upset and my partner looks at me with frustration and says, just calm down, they might not actually be criticizing my reaction at all. They might actually be communicating, your emotional intensity is waking up something inside of me. Maybe my own chaotic family history or my own suppressed anger that I do not have the tools to handle right now.
Yes.
That completely flips the script. It means they aren't necessarily rejecting my feelings. They are desperately trying to protect themselves from the feelings that my pain has awakened in them.
When you look at it through that lens, you realize how much of our communication is really just two nervous systems trying to avoid being overwhelmed.
Two nervous systems dodging each other.
Exactly. And our bodies track this invisible dynamic in real time. The body always knows when contact is authentic and when it has been interrupted.
Totally.
Think about how it physically feels when you bring your vulnerability to someone and they meet you with a quick fix or a demand to calm down. What happens in your body?
Oh, my chest tightens up. My stomach sinks. There's this very subtle, involuntary withdrawal. My shoulders literally round inward and I feel my vocal cords tighten. It's like a physical bracing.
Your body braces because it is receiving a subliminal message. It is being subtly told, your real feeling is too much for this space. Pack it away.
Wow. I can feel that physical bracing just talking about it, that sinking realization of, oh, okay, I am not safe to unravel here.
It's a very lonely feeling.
So if words and advice so often act as self-protection and they cause the other person to physically brace and withdraw, how do we actually stay in that extreme discomfort?
It's not easy.
If my instinct is to deflect or project, what is the alternative? How do we offer real grounded support?
It requires a profound shift toward what we call phenomenological awareness.
Okay, that sounds like a dense academic term. What does that actually look like in practice?
I know, it's a mouthful. But it simply means noticing what is actually happening in the present moment, in the here and now, without adding any interpretation, narrative, or judgment.
So just observing.
Basically, it means stripping away the story you are telling yourself about the other person. So instead of jumping to, you seem depressed about your job, you should quit, it is simply noticing reality.
Like what?
Like, I notice your shoulders are hunched right now.
Oh.
I notice your breath is very shallow. I notice you are looking at the floor. You don't assume. You don't project your own anxiety. You simply attend to the physical reality of the moment.
I really like the theory behind that. It reminds me of adjusting the focus on a camera.
Oh, how so?
Well, if you keep moving the camera around, like asking a million questions, offering unsolicited advice, projecting your own anxiety, the subject in the frame stays completely blurry.
Right, you can't get a clear shot.
Exactly. You can't see them clearly. You have to hold the camera completely perfectly still, which I guess represents the silence. You hold it still for the truth of the subject to finally sharpen into focus.
That is a brilliant way to put it.
But I have to push back again because part of me hears phenomenological awareness and thinks, isn't that just staring at someone?
I get that a lot, yeah.
Right. Because if a friend is crying on my couch and I just sit there silently analyzing their shallow breathing, doesn't that feel incredibly clinical? How does just watching them breathe feel supportive to them?
That is a crucial distinction to make. And if it were merely observation, it would absolutely be clinical and cold.
Right.
But phenomenological awareness in a relational context is not about observation. It is about attunement.
Yeah.
You are not staring at them from a distance like a specimen under a microscope.
Okay.
You are sharing your presence with them. You're looking with them, not at them. Think about what happens biologically when you do this.
Right.
When you stop analyzing their problem and just notice their breathing, your own nervous system slows down to match theirs.
Yeah.
This is a mechanism called co-regulation. You aren't just watching them, you are biologically anchoring them.
So by staying grounded in my own body, I am literally providing a calm frequency for their nervous system to tune into.
Exactly. There is this deeply resonant metaphor often used to explain this attunement. Think about a child who is running too fast and falls and scrapes their knee on the pavement.
Oh, yeah.
What is the very first thing that child needs from you? They do not need a lecture on the physics of gravity. They do not need a step-by-step action plan on how to tie their shoelaces better next time to avoid future falls.
They just need you to pick them up.
They need to be picked up. They need to be looked in the eyes. They need to be felt. Only after they feel entirely safe in that physical, silent connection can they even begin to process what just happened.
That is so true.
And the reality is that adults are absolutely no different. We just forget. We grow older and we armor ourselves in language and logic and, endless productivity. We use all of those tools to avoid admitting our primal fundamental need to just be held in our fragility.
We just want someone to pick us up when we scrape our emotional knees. That is so vulnerable. But if just sitting there is what we actually want, then my brain is clearly fighting my instincts. Why is my default setting to talk if my actual underlying need is silence?
That's the million-dollar question.
Why is it still so incredibly difficult for us to just sit there on the couch and say absolutely nothing?
Because it goes against decades of conditioning. We have to look at the emotional economies we grew up.
Emotional economies.
Yeah. For many of us, childhood taught us that love was conditional on being useful. We learned that being good meant not causing trouble, and that big, messy feelings were something to be managed, dismissed, or corrected.
Wow, yeah. Be seen and not heard, right?
Right. We were not taught that our mere presence is enough. We were taught that our presence is the tool that must perform a function.
Oh, that hits hard.
So when we sit in silence, we feel useless.
Yeah.
We feel like we are failing the economic exchange of the relationship. But as we discussed with co-regulation, biology tells a completely different story. It tells us that when you sit quietly with someone, fully grounded, your calm becomes an anchor for their storm. You don't have to change the weather, you just have to stand in the storm with them.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. In our society, saying something to a friend like, I don't know what to say right now, feels like a radical admission of total defeat.
It feels like a failure.
It feels like we're saying, I am useless to you. But actually, viewed through this lens, it is the most honest, generous, and loving thing you can possibly offer.
It really is.
Because when you look someone in the eye and say, I don't know what to say, what you are really communicating is, I cannot fix this. I don't have a magic wand, but I am not leaving. I am right here.
If we connect this to the bigger picture of how we relate to one another, it requires a fundamental paradigm shift.
Yeah.
The ultimate shift is moving from doing support to being support. True intimacy is not measured by the volume of words exchanged or the cleverness of the advice given.
Yeah.
It is measured in moments shared entirely without an agenda. It is the capacity to allow that cycle of experience to naturally complete itself.
Which takes a lot of patience.
It does. We often talk about the fire in the ground. The figure is what is most alive right now. The raw feeling, the tear, the anger.
And the ground.
The ground is all the context, the history, the background noise. When we interrupt a vulnerable moment with words and advice, we muddy the figure.
We blur the camera again.
Exactly. Silence is the spacious canvas that allows the figure, that true, raw feeling, to emerge cleanly and be witnessed.
So what does this all mean for us? It means that the path to deeper, more meaningful intimacy isn't about learning how to say more or finding the perfect words.
Not at all.
It is simply about interrupting less. It means the next time someone you love is hurting, before your anxiety makes you open your mouth to offer a solution, just pause.
Just breathe.
Feel your feet flat on the floor. Take a breath. Tolerate the discomfort of the quiet and just let your silence say, you are not alone in this.
That's beautifully put.
And to you listening right now, I want to challenge you. Give the people you love permission to be your companions, not your saviors. When you are hurting, dare to say out loud, I don't need answers today. I just need you near.
That is a profound challenge to leave with. And, I would add one final lingering thought to that.
I'd love to hear it.
We have spent this entire deep dive exploring how to hold this wordless, non-judgmental sacred space for other people. We've talked about being a steady anchor for their storms. But the true frontier, and perhaps the hardest, most terrifying challenge of all, is turning that exact same phenomenological awareness inward.
Oh, wow.
It is asking yourself if you can finally stop trying to fix yourself.
Yeah.
Can you take that feeling we talked about at the very beginning, that feeling of coming home completely hollowed out, unplugged, and exhausted?
Yeah.
And instead of frantic self-improvement or scrolling on your phone to deflect, can you just hold that exact same silent, compassionate space for your own pain? And you sit with yourself without repair,